that advice, Mayor.
You have gone live. The sound is now live. Whenever you want to start, Mayor, the broadcasting is ready.
Thank you. The City Council and Local Redevelopment Authority Board meetings for the City of Riverbank is now in session. Today is February 23rd, 2021. It is 6 p.m. This meeting will be held in accordance with the Governor's new Executive Order N2920, issued on March 17th, 2020, regarding the open meeting requirements of the Ralph M. Brown Act, California Government Code Section 54950 et sec, and the Federal Americans with Disability Act in an effort to help avoid the spread of COVID-19, to maximize transparency, and provide the public access to City Council meetings. Flag salute.
Would everyone please put your hand over your heart? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Council Authority Member District 2, Rachel Hernandez.
Here.
Council Authority Member District 3, Cal Campbell.
Here.
Council Authority Member District 4, Darlene Barber Martinez.
Here.
Vice Mayor Chair Luis Uribe.
Here.
Mayor Chair Richard D. O'Brien.
Here. There will be no changes to the agenda. Conflicts of interest. Any council or authority member or staff who has direct conflict of interest on any scheduled agenda item to be considered is to declare their conflict at this time. Public comments. I lost it. At this time, members of the public may comment on items not appearing on the agenda and within the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council LRA Board. Individual comments will be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes. Under state law, matters presented during the public comment period cannot be discussed or acted upon. For those who wish to make a comment at this time or on any of our items, please refer to the last page of this agenda for the public comment procedures via Zoom. Maricela, do we have any public comment?
Mayor, there are no members wishing to speak.
All right, thank you. Moving on to the consent calendar. Consisting of items 7.1, waive readings. Item 7.2, approval of the February 9th, 2021 City Council and Local Redevelopment Authority minutes. Is there any member from the council wishing to pull any items? Is there anyone wishing to make a motion?
Councilmember Barbara Martinez, I move that we approve the consent calendar as read.
Vice Mayor Uribe here, I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the consent calendar by Councilmember Barbara Martinez and a second by Vice Mayor. Roll call, please.
Council Authority Member Hernandez.
Yes.
Campbell.
Yes.
Barbara Martinez.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Chair Uribe.
Yes.
Mayor Chair O'Brien.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Item 8.1, a resolution approving the fiscal year 2021 mid-year budget amendments.
Thank you very much, Mayor. So first off, Maricela is going to do her general presentation that she typically does. This is a pretty comprehensive item because we're going to touch on all of the major funds that require some adjustments, and we're also going to talk about some big picture items to sort of lay the groundwork for some more detailed discussions we're going to have for the 21-22 budget. But I'm going to turn it over to her. She worked, it was mostly her, but she and I worked very hard to make sure that this was as thorough as possible, and also working with the department heads to make sure we're addressing as many concerns as we can within our means during the mid-year portion of our budget. So we'll hand it over to Maricela.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. Tonight we have for you the mid-year budget review. And just for background, why do we do a mid-year budget review? It provides us an opportunity to revisit the original projections that were made back in June 2020. As you're aware, the city begins its budgeting process in the month of March, presents a preliminary budget for adoption to the City Council in June. So those information that we have at that point in time is used in order to make our revenue and expenditure projections. Over the course of the fiscal year, we receive additional information from both the state and the county in terms of new revenue sources or additional revenue sources. And then we also see trends in our expenditures, as well as emergency items that sometimes pop up that the city needs to address. So this mid-year budget review process provides us the opportunity to make adjustments based on that new information, and it provides the departments a chance to request appropriations for emergency projects or equipment that might be required. So where we are now, so this graph here shows you the mid-year budget figures for what we consider our beginning reserve. So basically it's what the bank account started off with for the general fund. So at the beginning of this fiscal year, we projected about 3.16 million beginning reserve based on final revenues that are received through September that actually go back and are allocated to the prior fiscal year. We were able to adjust that beginning reserve to approximately $3.3 million. So a positive increase there. What does that mean? That means that our revenues last fiscal year exceeded our expenditures. Due to COVID, there were a lot of projects we were not able to complete, one of them being the community center kitchen remodel, which was originally intended to be funded through the general fund. So that provided a significant amount of savings to the general fund. In addition, we were able to offset some law enforcement salaries with the CARES funding that came through from the state of California. Now, originally, we projected approximately 9.9 million in revenues for the current year. With all of the new information and with the help of the CARES Act, we were able to adjust that projection to about $10.2 million. Now, expenditure-wise, we also saw increases, original being $10,610,000, and the adjusted budget $10,671,000. But overall, at the end of the year, we're going to see a positive effect to our ending reserve, and we are projecting approximately 28% in our general fund reserve. You'll just see here the expenditure trends that we've had over the past 10 years. You'll see that positive impact due to sales tax increases year over year as a result of a very beautiful shopping center that we have out at Crossroads. But you'll also notice this dip in revenues. Although we did have revenues that came in last year that exceeded our expenses, we still saw a lower revenue number than the prior year, and that was mainly due to COVID. It still impacted our sales tax, but we had savings in expenditures that helped us build up our reserve. So some of the positive news for this year is that we're seeing increases in our property tax, which is also causing us increase in our property tax in lieu of vehicle license fees. This is a property tax that comes directly from the state of California. They make their projections approximately in May, and then by August or September, we receive updated projections, which is the amount that we are amending our budget here today. Building permit fees, we continue to have increases in new housing construction. We have our countryside development on the east side of Riverbank that is continuing to build. And so we're seeing a positive impact from building permit fees. Now, we do see some losses. I'm only showing the major losses here, anything over $10,000 due to COVID. And it's due to the closure of our sports complex as we continue in the purple tier. Although now that modifications have been made to sports activities, there's the opportunity that the city will be able to continue to rent that out throughout the rest of the fiscal year. And then transfers in of management fee. So this fee is a fee that we charge to other funds for work that we perform that's related to that fund. In this case, we had our CARES money, which was set aside in a special fund, and we're now reimbursing the general fund for our public safety or law enforcement services. So overall, on the revenue side, as I mentioned, we're seeing an original budget of about 9.9 million and an amended budget of about 10.2, so a positive of $297,000. Mostly due to the CARES funding, which is one-time funding at this point in time. Expenditure-wise, you'll also notice that steady increase upwards over the past 10 years. And you'll notice this dip here is mainly due to the recession, layoff of staff in order to accommodate for loss of revenues. But since then, we've been seeing a steady increase as costs continue to increase and as we've been able to bring staff back. So overall for our expenses, these are some of the major expenses that we are anticipating increases in. For the general fund, we're looking at additional legal fees due to COVID and lawsuits. Our legal team has been doing an excellent job of keeping us apprised of all of the changes that have been made due to COVID, any new laws, any new human resources related items. But then we also have a few lawsuits that we have been named in that our legal department has had to address. In terms of staff, we're looking at some additional funding for two of our departments. As new development continues, we are going to need to make sure that we have sufficient staff to be able to address all of that additional development that's coming our way. We'll need staff to address building permits, building inspections, staff in public works in order to address assisting all of these new residents that are coming into our city. So we're currently starting off with 2 part-time positions. We're currently proposing one in our planning and development services department. That's going to be a part-time employee that will assist the both divisions. And we have a second position that we're requesting for Public Works Administration. Now, the Public Works Administration staff member will be offset by water and sewer revenues depending on the duties that they work on. One of the other major items that we will be having to face in the upcoming fiscal years are changes to unfunded mandates. So unfunded mandates are new laws and legislation that we have to comply with. Unfortunately, there's no offsetting revenue source to be able to meet those mandates. And so our general fund is the only source of funding that we currently have in order to make sure that we're addressing all of the legal reporting for all of these all this new legislation that is coming through. And you see on here listed AB 341, AB 1826, and SB 1383. All three of those are mandates that we have to follow in order to be in compliance with all these new changes to solid waste and how that's processed. So for the current fiscal year, we're allocating approximately $16,000 in order to meet the mandates that are due now. The one major change that we're seeing in the general fund is needing to provide a subsidy to our gas tax fund. So our gas tax fund receives two different types of funding sources. One is the traditional gas tax. So every time a resident pumps gas, we get allocated a certain portion of that fee that they're charged. Sometimes it's based on purchases within the city. Sometimes it's based on population. The second funding source that we receive is SB1, and that's strictly for street-related projects. The original gas tax is for operations. What we're seeing because of changes in fueling prices, changes in fueling habits, some of it due to COVID as more residents are working from home and not having to travel, as residents are staying home because they're unable to travel for entertainment or vacation. And then as fueling prices went down, that affected our original gas tax for operations. And so in order to meet all of those operating demands that we have, so it's our street lighting, it's our street maintenance, it's our street striping, it's our street sweeping, we're going to need to sort of give our gas tax fund a hand up. And so the general fund this year will need to assist our gas tax fund to the tune of about $100,000. Now for the upcoming fiscal year, we'll be looking at all of the expenses of that fund just to make sure that any contracts that we have outstanding, that we're getting the best price possible for those, and that we're trying to work as lean as we can within that operating accounts. And then one of the
So may I interject right here?
Yes.
I want to make sure that we truly annotate that as a loan, or because we got in trouble with the MOE when we, in 2000, I believe it was 2008, when we took over a project for water and roads maintenance. So now we have this MOE, which is unsustainable. So I would hate to have this compounded in 5-7 years from now, and saying that, well, you have to have an additional 100,000 onto your MOE.
I definitely understand your concern there, Mayor, because ultimately it will affect and for those who may not be aware, MOE is maintenance of effort. There's a minimum amount from our general fund that has to be allocated towards some of these types of expenditures like streets, in order to ensure that we will receive our fair share of the funding. And so by increasing the general fund subsidy and the amount that goes in, when they calculate that maintenance of effort or MOE, they take that increased amount into consideration and they'll take an average. So obviously, as we are allocating more funds, that average increases, therefore our MOE increases. So I do understand that concern, Mayor, and we can come back to have that discussion. If it's looking at it as a loan, then we'll need council direction on that item. And the last,
some loans don't get repaid.
We'll make sure to research that and have that as an option. And then the last project that we have here is the tennis court resurfacing. This is a shared project with the Riverbank Unified School District. Over the past 3 years, we have been working towards trying to complete all of the resurfacing at this 7th Street tennis court area. And they currently have the funding available through some of the bond issuances they've had over the past year. So they were simply waiting for us to complete to have our portion of the funding. So we thought we would allocate the funds so that we can get that project completed along with the school district. And so in terms of expenditures, we are looking at an additional $60,900 for the general fund. Now, considerations for future budgets for the general fund only. Some of the revenue changes that we're seeing with the move towards online purchasing, that decreases the amount that comes to the city in terms of sales tax. Business closures, some of those were temporary, but it still affected sales tax for us. And some of those were permanent. You know, I happened to notice the other day that Justice within our Crossroads Shopping Center had closed. Luckily, I didn't have any teen nieces that like to shop there, so I wasn't aware that they had closed. But that's what was noticed. We also have a future reinvention of shopping centers as more people are moving towards online purchasing. We have developers who are looking to reinvent their shopping centers with more service-based businesses as well as entertainment in order to make sure that they're still drawing members of the public to the center. And hopefully the offset will be, oh, I need to go shopping. I'm already here. Let me go ahead and go pick up that item I need. There's also, on the positive note, the potential for another round of assistance for cities in order to mitigate the impacts of COVID. So that would be on the revenue side. And then, of course, new development is happening here and will continue to happen as Crossroads West begins to build. And so we'll see the positive impacts to property taxes. In terms of expenditure increases in the future, new staffing obviously comes with the need for benefits to go along with that. And so those costs continue to rise over the next couple of years. We have our CalPERS unfunded liability, which we've discussed in the past with the City Council and the increases that we'll see on an annual basis there. I have a note here that there's a asset liability management process that will begin in 2021. This is a process that CalPERS undergoes every 4 years. And the intent of the process is to make sure that all of the policies they have set for their assets and their investments, for the way that they recoup funds from the cities in order to pay off liabilities for those that have retired and will be retiring in the upcoming years, are set so that we are able to make sure that we're recouping enough funds in order to make those payments. Capital needs that have no other funding sources. So one of the projects that I mentioned a minute ago was the tennis court resurfacing. Without the general fund, projects like that wouldn't be able to be completed. And then we also have subsidies to other funds. Some of it may be to offset the lack of fee collection. For example, our community center, we're not able to rent that out at this point in time, but there may be still some energy costs associated to that, especially right now that we have construction going on in the kitchen area. And then funding for operations and for the maintenance of effort that we discussed earlier. So for gas tax, as I mentioned earlier, operations-wise, we will be providing an additional funding source from the general fund, whether that be via a loan or via a direct subsidy. We will let council have that discussion at a later time. But overall, we're seeing amended revenues of $1.3 million, amended expenditures of $1.5 million. The reserve that we are anticipating to end at 23% is 100% allocated towards SB1 projects. While yes, it is concerning to see expenditures that are exceeding revenues, most of the increase in expenditures is due to projects that have been approved to be paid with SB1 funds. Now, our sewer fund is also seeing a positive impact here and is also seeing something similar to our gas tax fund in that the increases in expenditures and the what we call structural deficit, meaning that our expenditures are exceeding our current year revenues, are all due to the funding of the projects that were included in the 5-year sewer rate study. So when the rate study was developed, our Public Works Department went through all of our sewer all of our sewer lines to see what may need upgrades. We included those within the rates so that we could fund those once sufficient revenues were received. So currently there's engineering that's going on so that we can start to begin working on those projects. But overall, we'll be ending the fiscal year with approximately 80% in the reserve. Now, this fund has suffered some losses due to COVID. Those revenue losses are primarily associated with the waiver of the late penalty fees. Our water fund will end with a reserve of approximately 69%. At this point in time, we've accumulated 1 year of consumption data that it's going to assist with our revenue projections. So when we first developed the budget for the water fund back in June, we had just started to bill for consumption. So we didn't have enough data in order to accurately project what revenues would look like. Now that we have 1 year of revenues, we're going to see a change in that revenue projection in order to accommodate for the additional consumption that has been billed. Now, also take into consideration the fact that stay-at-home orders have impacted consumption. As families stay home, they are using more water. Children are at home during the day, and so that's more water consumption that's occurring. And so that is causing an increase in production. So we are seeing that on the expenditure side as well, as we're seeing higher electric bills for our water wells and our sewer, our sewer pumps are seeing that also as well on the sewer side. Revenue losses, same as the sewer fund due to the waiver of penalties. And then future reserves, now that we are starting to bill for consumption, all of that additional consumption funding that we're receiving will be allocated towards the 5-year rate study projects as well. Those have been delayed since we were not billing for consumption, but now that that fee has started to come in, then we're able to set that aside so that we can perform some projects. And public benefit. So at the end of the fiscal year, we're projecting a reserve of about $1.4 million. Some of the positive impacts we had there is we're looking at continued funding coming from new developers and new development agreements that have been approved by the city. We're also renegotiating some of the currently existing development agreements. And then there's future public safety capital projects to take into consideration. So where we are, we're still within those discussions about when a recession might occur, especially now that COVID has impacted some businesses significantly, and the loss of our residents losing jobs. There's all the signs there that a recession is pending. One of the discussions that we always want to have with council is what can we do to plan now in order to mitigate the impacts of a recession? A recession always results in a loss of revenue. I think we've set ourselves with all this new development in a good stage, because what we hope will happen, as did in the last recession, is that our shopping center is so centrally located that residents tend to go there anyways, rather than going into any of the other cities for their shopping. And so the sales tax is what really helped us make it through that last recession, and we hope that that will continue in the future. We also have to discuss the timing of future rate studies. For water and sewer in 2015, we adopted the 5-year rates. That last rate went into effect in July of 2019. We are now in 2021. So over the course of the year, we've seen those increases in expenditures as a result of increased production. And so we'll need to discuss at some point in time how we get those rates to come in consistently in order to make sure that we're meeting all of those operational needs. And then solid waste, you'll be hearing from our solid waste provider at a meeting in March regarding all of these new solid waste mandates that will need to be taken into consideration and that have the potential to affect our rates. We also have labor negotiations, which are going to begin in early 2022. And then on the expenditure side, we're looking at staffing increases, increasing cost in personnel benefits, as I mentioned, the solid waste unfunded mandates, and then deferred maintenance that we have on our city buildings and infrastructure. And with that, our recommendation to the City Council tonight is to consider approving the mid-year budget amendments as presented. And I'm available for any questions you may have.
All right, fire away at Maricela. Who's first?
Okay, Councilmember Barbara Martinez. I was wondering if in the expenditure, well, I guess maybe the income that we expect. However, did we make an adjustment for the decrease in the revenue that we are getting from the development agreement change of flavors?
Yes.
That's
so all that has been taken into consideration.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Next. Okay, then I will speak since no one else is jumping up. As we move forward with our new development, I think we should also look at the expansion of the camera system in the new development area. And that's going to be an increase, and hopefully that we can have some of that through development fees, because that now should be standard. And that came to me, while Sean was not talking to me. So, and Maricela, you're right. The signs are there for recession, but it's kind of mixed. And I think from what my studies have been in economics, we're going to have a major boost for a short period of time if we open up soon before we start the decline. And the decline, I think, would be slower because more people will be opening up as the decline goes. But that's just my opinion, and it doesn't really amount to much. One of the areas, though, the stormwater, to me, is very important for the city. We don't really have a good fund. We don't really have a good we have a good plan, but we don't have good coordination in getting the stormwater. I'm going to give you just my thoughts. In Stanislaus County, we get about 12 inches of rain a year, correct? That is, if you have an acre, that's an acre foot. In the city of Riverbank, currently, we have approximately 3,068 acres. So that would give you 3,000 plus acres feet of water. If you can capture that, clean it, and put it back into the aquifer or use it elsewhere. As we expand, which will be for Riverwalk area and some of the others, that's just under city limits. But as we expand, we can capture much more of that stormwater, and we can be putting the water back into our aquifer. The importance of a complete a complete stormwater system is to capture all that water and put more in than you're taking out. For example, if we can claim that we capture 100% stormwater, we would be claiming 2 years worth of pumping. So we put more back in. In the long run, we are a steward of water. We are not a user of water. We are improving the aquifer. And then if we want to say, and we're not going to put it all back in, we put all the stormwater in, and there in the summer months, after we clean through our tertiary plant, we also put that back in the wet months, dry months back to agriculture. Our aquifer will be floating up and out if we do the way we're doing it. But we have to have a concrete stormwater plan. And although we're borrowing from the stormwater system, in the future, I would like to start looking at using that to complete our regional stormwater master plan. Do I make sense, Mayor Sala?
You do, Mayor.
Also, in the personnel that we need in the future, I think we should really consider the chief's request on a supervisor for the swing shift. But that's from the Public Safety Fund. That's for everyone. Any other comments? All right, we're going to move on to, I have now, since I'm doing this by computer, give me 1 second. God, it sucks getting old. All right, the next one is LRA Item 8.2, resolution approving the LRA fiscal year 2021 mid-year budget amendments.
Mayor, I think we need a vote on the prior item.
Oh, darn it, yes, we do.
Mayor,
Before I do that, thank you very much. I also need the public comment.
Yes.
Okay, Mayor Feller, is there any public comment?
There are no members of the public wishing to speak.
I'll bring it back to the council for recommendation.
Vice Mayor Uribe here. I'll make a motion to approve item 8.1.
Councilmember Barbara Martinez, I second the motion.
We have a motion to approve item 8.1 and a second. Roll call, please.
Council Authority Member Hernandez,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Barbara Martinez,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Chair Uribe,
Yes.
Mayor Chair O'Brien.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Thank you all. That was, I think we're in a good place and we have to get into a better place. And with the staff help, I really truly believe that our staff has been amazing in our journey for at least the last 8-9 years. So thank you all. And Sean, make sure everyone knows that we really appreciate our staff. LRA Item 8.2, resolution approving the LRA fiscal year 2020-2021 mid-year budget amendments.
Thank you, Mayor. Due to unforeseen circumstances, the person who normally would present this, Melissa Holdaway, is not able to be here with us this evening, and so I'm going to sub in for her. So you have to forgive that I'm not going to have the fancy graphics that Maricela does, but I've explained this budget about, well, 5 times now. So I think I can do it quickly for you. So the LRA budget is a sort of an unusual fund for the city because it operates so differently than any of our other enterprise funds or the general fund. There's such a variety of revenues that's received. It filters grants in and out. There's federal assistance. There are ESCA related cleanup items that are funded through the federal government. Then there are rent revenues. And then there are operation and maintenance revenues that we receive. So it's actually the budget itself and the mid-year adjustments we're proposing are not that complicated, but in general, the overall budget of the LRA is fairly complicated for a smaller size. But just in general, I'm going to highlight our proposed amendments, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the structural deficit, which we've had the last couple years in the LRA, and why we're not overly concerned about it. Highlights with regard to revenues. We're going to continue to see slight decreases in our OEA grants, as well as an OEA, for those out there that don't know, is Office of Economic Adjustment, as well as operations and maintenance funds that we receive from the federal government. And part of that is related to us nearing the end of the Army's tenure at that site and the city hopefully taking that over. And so...
Sorry to interrupt. Are you going to be sharing a screen for our residents that are tuning in here?
Yeah, I'll share with you the staff report here. Hold on 1 sec here. Okay. So, we're going to continue to see those bits of financial assistance that the federal government gives decrease, and they're going to continue to decrease with the understanding that the LRA becomes more self-sufficient over time, and eventually when they transfer the property, obviously they won't be paying any money towards that, which is why we have decided to go the master developer route, but I'll come back to that shortly. You will see that the one really positive financial component here is rents. Rents are up over our projections. That's primarily related to 2 tenants, 1 small tenant, and then Circulus, which is our newest. This item is really important. I'm going to spend just a really brief minute or 2 on it because I want to explain. It has come up a number of budgets in a row now. There is a variety of personal property that was left over by the Army on the site. By that, I mean industrial personal property. So big industrial presses and other types of equipment like that. The city is allowed to sell that property. And we have actually contracts already agreed to and have for many years for the sale of that property. However, there has been a very lengthy and difficult process with regard to the US EPA clearing those for sale, because there's a level of, many of the pieces of equipment have paint that could possibly have PCBs, which is a contaminant at the plant, on them. And so there's some of the folks that are interested in purchasing this are self-performing those cleanups. And in other cases, we're trying to negotiate how those get cleaned up by, with the other buyers. So we're very close. We think usually that we're right about ready to sell them. I think we did at the beginning of this fiscal year. Due to COVID, a lot of things sort of paused out at the plant, and this was one of them. And so we're not expecting that this property gets sold between now and June 30th. And so we'll likely build those revenues into to next budget cycle. I'm going to just hit the highlights here because some of these are more minor in nature. You have some small changes to salary and fringe benefits. Our legal costs, both for conveyance and general municipal, has increased quite a bit this year. This is, as you see in the explanation here, primarily related to the transfer the master developer negotiations, and ongoing sort of pre-environmental analysis with regard to the Ametis project. And I think that we have to be prepared that these costs are going to continue because, at least through the transfer and signing of the MDA, because it's just a very labor-intense project from a legal perspective. It requires a lot of legal review. These are complicated contracts, and we want to make sure we get it right the first time. We have broker fees in here for the attraction of Circulus. In the past, the LRA had not had broker fees because we'd never used brokers. And when we lost our biggest tenant, Dayton Superior, years ago, year and a half ago, we were very concerned about our ability to attract another major tenant. And so we have teamed up with brokers to really market the site. Carrie Pope has done an excellent job at that and has brought in at least 3 pretty dynamic businesses to our facility. One of which is Circulus, which we've talked a lot about, and then there are others that are in various stages of lease negotiations with Michael. Electrical PMs means electrical preventative maintenance. That's basically working on our transformers out there, which there are many. And we did a very large project last year, and we thought there were going to be a little bit more this year, but we were able to finish it all before the beginning of last fiscal year. So we no longer need to budget for that 50,000s. And then finally, there's some minor tenant improvements related to Circulus. We typically will work on rent offsets with that to make it no net difference to our operational budget. So the bottom line, when you add all that in, is that I'm going to see if I don't know if you can see my mouse, but I'll highlight this. This middle column here that says mid-year proposed is what you want to look at. Due almost entirely to the lack of our ability to sell that personal property, our revenues dropped about $236,000, and we had some increase in expenditures, but that's again primarily related to the transfer and master developer contract, so it was sort of anticipated. And we now are looking at a structural deficit in that fund of about $121,000 and change. So what I want to explain why typically under any other sort of budgetary scenario, especially like in an enterprise type of fund, what we would do is we would simply just cut expenditures to meet our revenues. So it was a sort of a zero-based budget. In this particular case, there's a couple reasons why we can't do that. We must move forward with the needed review and legal services in order to complete our transfer and master developer agreement. That's been a top priority for council for a number of years, and we're right on the precipice. And in addition to that, there are just certain things at the plant that are necessary to be doing to keep it viable and operational. So one of the reasons why we're not overly concerned about the structural deficit is that as long as the master developer agreement at some point is approved, there will be a payment made to the city for the property, and that payment can go towards offsetting any previous structural deficits that the city has had in the past. So basically, we'll absorb all of that revenue and zero out those deficits, and that money essentially will come into the city's pooled cash system. I put a little narrative in here that explains that although it's not technically, the city's general fund is not technically floating the Riverbank Industrial Complex, we do operate a pooled cash system, so we will have to reimburse our general fund with revenues received when we do sell the property to a master developer. So if we were I think I mentioned to a couple council members during our agenda prep meetings, is that if we were in a different scenario entirely, where for some reason we couldn't attract a master developer, or we had thought, we would prefer to retain the property and run it for a number of years, this budget would be non-sustainable for, we probably could get by for a year or two, but we would have to raise rents. We probably would have to look to make some compromises with regard to the kinds of tenants that we'd like out there to try to drive up revenues in order to meet the various expenditures that are out there and are required. So in a nutshell, that is our requested amendments for the LRA budget, the Riverbank Industrial Complex. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Anyone have questions for Sean? I have no. Okay, go ahead.
Well, I don't have a question about the budget, and this may be the inappropriate time to ask, but how soon and how close are we to the conveyance? Where are we?
I think I feel confident to be able to tell you the most recent information that we've received is it seems that it's possible and probable because of the city council members and the mayor, vice mayor, our congressman, a variety of other people who have all advocated at various levels to try to get this process moving along. All of those little bits of encouragement to our federal authorities seems to have, it appears as though we may be able to get that done this year if things really mature quickly. I'm hesitant to tell you the detail outside of closed session because it's really related to the Ametis negotiation, and so I don't want to get into too much detail. But their general projections up until very recently were third or fourth quarter of 2022, and we believe that it'll happen before that. And I'll be happy to address that in greater detail when I can publicly.
Thank you. I think the budget, I don't have any questions about it. I think it was pretty good detail to tell us what's going on.
Any other comments or questions on the LRA budget? To piggyback on what Sean was saying, Darlene, the Army may say we're going to do this in an X date, let's say 90 days from now, give us a solution, but then all of a sudden it goes to somebody's lawyer within the department they don't know anything about. And we had a stop workage for Circulus that was supposed to be lifted, and it's not lifted because some lawyer wants to look at it. So it's frustrating. It could be this year. It should be this year. It should be by the second quarter, but we'll see what happens. And I'll tell you what, Sean, Maricela, George Schlossberg, you had Vice Mayor in there too, Sean. Yeah, talking to Washington to get them to move it along. And I contacted Harder to see what he could do, and his staff has done a good job. But we're at the same place as we were in 2016 when we were just about ready to get it. You got it? Okay, are there any public comments? Excuse me, any more staff, council comments? Are there any public comments? That's you, Maricela.
There's no members of the public wishing to speak, Mayor.
Very well, then we'll bring it back to the council for recommendation. I'll move that we approve item 8.2, the LRA fiscal year 2021 mid-year budget amendments. Is there a second?
Vice Mayor Uribe here, I'll second it.
We have a motion to approve in a second. Roll call, please.
Council Authority Members Hernandez?
Yes.
Campbell?
Yes.
Barbara Martinez?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Chair Uribe?
Yes.
Mayor Chair O'Brien?
Yes,
Motion passes 5-0.
thank you. Item 9.1. Riverbank Cheese and Wine 2021 discussion and direction.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I'm gonna share the report again.
Fine.
Because I want to make sure everybody can see it. So, okay, this is, we're kind of at, we need some council direction here. And I won't read verbatim the report. I'll just sort of in highlights let you know that obviously last year the city council made the decision, which was obviously the correct one, to cancel the wine and cheese and a variety of other events we typically do, especially as the virus situation grew worse as we were getting closer to the end of the year. And so as we've seen some positive improvements with regard to the virus, especially within the last like 30 days, Sue, our Parks and Rec director, and I have been discussing that we really need to make some decisions or at least get some solid direction from the city council with regard to a variety of recreation programs, but the most pressing for this moment is what we do about wine and cheese. So we have wine and cheese in October of every year, and we typically Sue's department starts the planning process of that in March every year. And it sounds like a long time, but it really takes that long to line up all of the pieces that you need to pull off a successful event, especially when you have other job duties. So the thought is that our first question was, what are other jurisdictions doing? Are we going to see events this year? Is it a likelihood? So we did a little research. I've had trouble getting more back than was in the report. I've asked quite a few other jurisdictions what they're going to do, and I think everybody's in the same boat right now where they're trying to decide if they plan something for the fall or not. What I do know is that both the Oakdale Rodeo and the Chocolate Festival are going to be moving forward, although I believe the Chocolate Festival has been moved into the later summer. The Stanislaus County Fair, as far as I know, is still moving forward for their event in July. And then one of the large ones is the Asparagus Festival in Stockton, which is a very big event, and they're moving that to September, but are still planning to move forward at this time. So it does appear, at least regionally, that there is some desire to try to pull off some of these events as things improve. I think because of the fact that vaccines are slowly, but they are rolling out, there's some optimism that perhaps we may be in a situation where we can move forward. So I'm going to, here's what we would suggest. There's really a couple options. The council could direct us to move forward, and we'll start the planning phase right away, understanding that the event may feel a little bit different this year. We've talked about maybe changing the geography of the event so that's not so tightly packed together. Obviously, we're going to be wearing masks for the foreseeable future, so it'll be required, you have to wear a mask. And there's a couple of other ideas that Sue and the festival promoter have been working on that might not only make it feel a little more safe, but bring some new flavor to the event. And what we would do is just start that effort in earnest, and then we would return to you probably twice between now and October, probably once in June and once more towards the beginning of August, to update you on A, here's what's going on with COVID as it relates to large gatherings, and B, here's how the planning is going. So in the event that something awful occurs and there's a new strain or the virus gets worse somehow throughout the summer, or as we move into the September, October months, the council will still have an opportunity to cancel the event if it's not allowed to happen or it doesn't feel safe. There's some minor financial impact to this. We did a little bit of calculation. I think we will be having to pay for some of those services to start planning it, and if we cancel it, obviously that's lost funds. But we think that it's relatively minor, probably less than about $8,000, of cost during that time. So we feel like the risk is fairly low for us to simply start the process of planning the event. Alternatively, council could choose to just simply cancel the event this year. And the only concern I think that we have is that, you know, there's likely going to be some difficulty restarting it in future years after it's taken 2 years off. So those are really the two kind of clear options we see. But if council wants to give some other, you know, hybridized direction, we'd be happy to hear it. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
No questions, but Councilmember Barbara Martinez. I know that the event is usually the second weekend in October. So in looking at planning from now until that time that we have the event, I think that we all know that, yes, it's going to look a little different, but I think that we need to still go ahead and plan. And even if it means that we have less capacity, I don't know how we can control that, Chief, that'll be your job. But if we still, you know, just move forward and plan on having the event, I think we're moving in the right direction. But understanding that it will be different. There will be some changes. If that means, like I said, fewer participants, fewer vendors, I just still think that we should go ahead and plan for the event. And who knows what will happen in October. I would hate to see that, you know, the virus cases and numbers and so forth are really substantially have decreased, and then we just don't have any kind of an event at all. So I think that our community would appreciate the event, knowing that Riverbank, that's what we stand for, that event, and I think we should plan for it.
Vice Mayor Uribe here, I'll have to agree. I think we should prep for the best case scenario. I think most of the data we're seeing in regards to like increased vaccine allocation, the reported cases are down, hospitalization rates are down. I mean, if we're trending that way, we'll be projected to be in the purple tier by mid-March. I'm hoping everything just continues to improve and we'll be back to some type of normal by July. I would like to see the event spread out as best we can. Masks, of course, mandatory. And yeah, I'm for seeing this event hopefully you know, coming to fruition at the end, you know, in October. So I'll be for it.
Councilmember Cal Campbell, I agree with everything that the Vice Mayor said, and also Councilmember Martinez. And I think it would be something positive if we put this on to help the morale of this community as we try to get back to normal. And we should explore it at this time and make the adjustments that are needed to make that it's safe for everybody if we do put it on. Thank you.
Councilmember Hernandez, I also agree. And like Councilmember Barbara Martinez mentioned, I think that we should expect it to look different, but like nonprofits, I work during the day, we're actually seeing from a budget perspective that we're spending less and being more creative. So I'm optimistic about it, and I think we should move forward.
Thank you all. I'd like to also chime in. I'd like to have three scenarios for the event. And I want to know about the size, different sizes, three different sizes, what we had when we were kind of clamping down because of security concerns, expanded what we normally have, and maybe even a bigger footprint to ensure that we have social distancing, or a hybrid of that. If we could, let's say we have a lesser area from a wide one, but a smaller amount of vendors. But I think you're going to see a lot of vendors wanting to come on in, so it may be the largest size. I also like to see a security point of it. What type of security, from low, medium, and to the extreme that we had 2 years ago. And then the last one is not on the revenue side, but the revenue that we expect to expend, because this is our key event. This is our keystone event for the city. It has been now for how many years? Almost 49 years. If you consider the cheese and wine at my house last year as being the one that we had, so that would have been 49 in a row. So let's continue that. My only concern would be if we don't secure that weekend, it's going to be taken over by some other event. So let's put it out boldly to say that this is our event at this time frame, and no other event can jeopardize it. Because you're going to have probably 8 to 10 events every weekend in a row. I want to secure ours. Are there any public comments?
Mayor, there are no public comments.
Thank you. Are there any additional guidelines or discussions for item 9.1? Shonda, you and your staff have enough direction?
Yeah, I think based on what everybody said, I think I think your point though about making sure that we're very open about the fact we are doing wine and cheese, at least at this point, and that this is the weekend. That's really good advice and direction, because you're right. You see all of these events that typically happen in the spring and summer getting moved to the fall. So there is going to be a crunch. And so I think it's good we're starting in March, because we'll be able to maybe hopefully lock up some of those vendors early. And that's what Sue and her people are good at. They know all those folks.
Right. And not only I, but everybody gave that direction. So we're going to move on.
Yes. I apologize. You're right.
Yeah, you're right. I'm always right. All right. So we're going to move on to item 10, comments and reports.
Sure.
Item 10.1, staff.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Okay, so a couple things. One is the Vice Mayor Uribe and Councilmember Hernandez and I worked with the city of Patterson, along with a local attorney, the Small Business Development Center, and the Downtown Modesto Partnership, to put on a business seminar last week for small business in Riverbank. And we were very happy with you always want more, but we were generally very happy with the turnout and the assistance that was offered a number of small businesses. If you're out there and you're a small business and you didn't get to see it, please check our website. I'm hoping by the end of this week, we'll have everything up and all of the resources needed for you to be able to watch the video if you want. If you're not interested in sitting, it's about an hour long. If you're not interested in sitting through that and you just want direct information on the Paycheck Protection Program, the Economic Disaster Relief Program, and then the RAD card or a few others, you could just call our office. You can ask to speak to either myself or Maricela, and we can either answer some of those questions or we can get you to one of the 3 panelist experts that we had who are committed to answering those for you. So we've already had a number of businesses reach out since the last meeting. And so big thanks to all the parties that put that on, because I think it helps some folks. And I know I mentioned this, I think, a meeting or two ago, but I did get confirmation. It does appear now that Crossroads will begin grading in March, so that you'll start to see dirt moving out there. We will do some type of ribbon cutting with the council, and there seems to be a fairly aggressive push now from the developers to really get buildings, homes built, in the summertime. So pretty cool. That's been a project that's been in the making for well over 10 years, I think, at this point. And then we will have members from a consulting group that works for the Community Systems of Care, as well as Stanislaus County. I sent out a survey of a homeless strategic plan that they're putting together for a countywide initiative. And we're going to post that on our social media as well as our website. So if there's any community members, council members, whoever that would like to fill that out, I actually filled it out myself today, and it only took about maybe 15 minutes. It's very well put together and really makes you think about what some solutions could be for homelessness. So please keep an eye out for that. Also, we will have an item related to a county strategy for homeless encampments on the next meeting that's been routed to us for our consideration. And then I think Vice Mayor Uribe has an update about the strategic plan and them coming to the second meeting. So I'll leave that for him to say. And that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Hernandez.
Another. Oh, were you going to say something, Sean?
Yes, I apologize. I just got a message. I forgot something. We have received some correspondence. Also, I think it's been mentioned by other council members in the past regarding a Centennial Committee. I'll be getting that on for future council discussion so that we can set up a group of individuals that want to help with that. We've already had some discussions. Actually, just today, the mayor was in the office and we happened to catch our festival promoter for the wine and cheese and asked her to give us some ideas about different neat things we could do for the Centennial. So I'll put something on next meeting to discuss that.
Great, you just took away something I was going to talk about.
Yeah, quick update for Love Riverbank. I think so. What we decided that it's going to be more focused on 3 specific projects for Love Riverbank and mainly virtual. So I'll share next meeting what those are going to look like and push out more information. But I do want to open up for your consideration to join a committee starting later this spring for Love Riverbank so that it can be more robust in the years that are coming and more sustainable too, because it was just in years past seeing how great it was and all the involvement that happened. We're hoping to get it at that level or even more. I guess something fun for you all to consider is that there is a conference going on for young people, 7th through 12th graders, hosted by Invest in Me. It's a small nonprofit in the Patterson area. I'm going to keynote that, and there's going to be various workshops by public officials and different people for young people. And so that's pretty exciting. It's free to attend. So if you want more information on that, you can let me know.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Kimball.
Just like to remind everybody that the Riverbank in River Cove is still closed, and I'm mentioning that because the weather's starting to get nice, and I think that we might let the public know that the bank is still closed technically for renovation of the vegetation that's on it. And with the weather getting better and nicer, we may start having some problems with people trying to go down there. So I'd like for Sean and our chief to keep an eye on things. Thank you.
Councilmember Barbara Martinez. Thank you, Cal.
Maricela, I'd like to say thank you for the budget report. As always, a job that was well done. And Sean, thank you for putting the loan assistance webinar together. It was very informative and appreciated. And I did hear some positive feedback from a few of the businesses. And just to encourage everyone to get their shots, I have had both of my COVID shots, and I'm just encouraging the public to do the same. And I'd like to also remind everyone about to enjoy the warm weather, but please continue to be safe with your mask and social distancing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. So yesterday we had a grim milestone for our country as we surpassed that 500,000 COVID-19 deaths. So it's kind of important to reflect on what we've all endured as we reach the first anniversary of being in this pandemic. The course is changing, so just stay hopeful. Last Tuesday, I got the chance to tour Circulus at the Riverbank Industrial Complex, and I wanted to thank General Manager John Villarreal for taking the time to show us around. And as we look to attract more green industries to Riverbank, we should consider looking into zoning it for those specific businesses beyond the specific plan, and consider that during our general plan update. For homelessness, I know that we've had some increased desire that we find some type of solution, and glad that real solutions are in the works with possible funding for a transitional shelter. And as Sean mentioned, a strategic plan is being worked on by Homebase, who will be coming to Riverbank. It sounds like that second meeting in March. So I encourage all residents. I also filled out the survey today. Please take that time, take that 15 minutes to fill out that survey. If you need if you want to reach out directly to me, reach out to me via email, and I can just send it directly to you at luribe@riverbank.org. And thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, my 2022 100th anniversary pitch was taken away from me, but let's start thinking about what we want to do and have a committee to bring a lot of things into fruition. My comments are on that. Make it a year-long celebration. The 23rd of August is going to be hotter than heck. Do we want to do all the celebrations on the hot day, or celebrate Riverbank the entire time, culminating in September with a cultural festival for the city, and then veterans, and then all the way up until the Christmas event? We can make it a year-long celebration, not expensive, but highlighting events that have happened in Riverbank over a 12-month period. But I'm sure Sean and others will take that over. Homeless issue, good point there, Vice Mayor. We have some big issues with where we're housing them now and how we're going to take care of them in the future. And we need to move that along. And I tell you, I am frustrated with, yes, we're going to highlight this to the state and they're going to help us with funding. They haven't. So let's don't get disappointed. Let's start being a little bit more proactive and trying to secure in the future we may get funding. Let's borrow now and move it along. For Circulus or other out there at the LRA, if Circulus is going to have a ribbon cutting, I want to make it big. I want to make it big for the entire council. I want it big enough to get enough press to drag the governor down to our LRA, to our industrial complex, to highlight what we're doing now. Because word is out, and from the Army, we may have the final faucet by the end of April, which means it then goes to the governor. We can invite him down here and say, this is here. This is what we're doing. Oh, by the way, that you should expect this. He knows about it. He had Treasure Island, Hunter Point. He had the Army Presidio, all in San Francisco while he was there. So let's get him engaged. So when it comes across his desk, he's signing it and not being concerned about a recall or whatever other the pandemic that he has. And just to let you all know, Form 700s are due at the end of next month. So with that, we're going to go to closed session. The public will have a limit of 3 minutes to comment on closed session items as set forth in the agenda prior to the City Council LRA Board adjourning to the closed session. Consistent of item 11.1, conference with real property negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8, property APN 062031005 through 007. Agency negotiator Sean Scully, City Manager, property negotiator, Ametis Inc., under the negotiation, price, term, or payment of both. The city council, Marcel, is there anyone wishing to comment on item 11?
There are no members wishing to comment.
Okay, at this time, we're going to go into closed session. And as we emerge from closed session, you will find the items that we have made agreements on that are for the public will be in our next scheduled meeting minutes. So at this time, we're going to go to closed session. Thank you. Our next meeting will be held on March 9th, 2021 at 6 p.m. Thank you and good night.